Welcome to the Nurses Journal. This podcast is for nurses by nurses. I'm your host, Mel Cortez, a critical care nurse, entrepreneur, boy mom, and cultivator of all things light and love. In true ICU style, this podcast will be raw, unfiltered, and capture what nursing really is behind all the hero signs. Florence would be so proud. Join us every week for a heaping nursing dose of truth, practical knowledge, and ideas to create real change. Hey everybody, thanks for checking out our live for the Nurses Journal podcast. You're gonna wonder why I have this non-nurse with me, but it's really awesome, I promise. I have a good excuse. Speaking of which, what are you doing with your life? Everyone, this is the Primal Hippie. We're so excited to have him as part of our Cortex collaborator network. So those of you who don't know, I am starting a company for nurses. Well, surprise! I quit my day job, and then I realized that I needed to help other people not quit their day job, and that was my purpose. So that's kind of what I've been doing for nurses, and I really appreciate everybody's support. Has been awesome today. Our course came out today, and just everybody's been really supportive. And speaking, when I started doing that, I was like, I need these people. I need this network for these nurses. I need to create a place where they can come and heal and get all the good stuff that the universe, the world, has to offer us. So I saw the Primal Hippie on Instagram, and he's like this tatted up dude. First of all, I thought you were half Latino. I knew it. And I was like, he's tatted up and he's doing yoga. I was like, okay, I need to know more about this, because I could just see all my favorite like badass ER, ICU nurse dudes, paramedics just rocking out with you. So tell us more about who the Primal Hippie is and what your life is about.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on, and thank you for finding me. That's awesome. But I'll kind of, I came into the wellness field through like a long journey that I can kind of sum up quickly. But first off, I was born in California, where I reside now, but I grew up, my dad was French. And so when we were little, going into first grade, my parents wanted us to have a little bit of education from both like the European style and the American style. So we packed up, moved the whole family over to Paris, and that's where I grew up. I grew up in Paris, France, and then came back to the States for junior high and high school.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I no longer have my accent, which I kind of regret now, but it's all right.
You're only half cool. You only have
right. I can fake one really good, but and then my parents were both artists. My mom is still an artist. My dad passed away a few years ago, but, I definitely wanted, and they molded me to kind of go into they really didn't want me to have a cubicle job. That was the one goal for them. So they pushed me towards art school, not really pushed, but really heavily encouraged me to go to art school.
No big deal.
Right. And so I did that. I went to art school in San Francisco and, realized, when I got there, I was a very small fish in this giant pond of hyper talented art students. And, the only class that really spoke to me was art history, and the other ones I was just way out of my league. So I let art school go, went to culinary school, also in San Francisco, and got my culinary.
Like art? I mean, that's art.
Yeah, it is. It's a form of art, I think. And it's like art and hard labor and like all the things at once. You learn a lot in the kitchen, and I definitely learned a lot. And that I always enjoyed cooking. I think growing up in France really helped mold that.
They have like excellent cuisine. Oh yeah.
And that kind of set like a tone for me to appreciate good ingredients, to appreciate food that's either grown or raised the right way, taken care of. And so I've always had that in the back of my mind. And after a while, the culinary industry, service industry is just a tough thing to be a part of. And I'll get into that in a second. But, I left eventually, and I met my wife and got that cubicle job. And I did that for years and years. And it just, you know, it was a means to an end. I made good money, but I never had any passion in it. I never had any purpose in it. And what was always drawing me back was nutrition. I started getting into like kind of like kettlebell workouts when they started to get popular, all that kind of stuff. And all the while this was going on, you know, my time in the kitchen, well, if you work at a kitchen or a bar, you know that the only thing that's open after you get off of work are bars, like, you know, other bars, other kitchens. So that's where I would spend my time. And eventually, you know, it got to the point where the drinking, the partying, all that is something, you know, I kind of pushed aside and let go most of it, except the drinking still stayed with me, you know. And as I started to get older, I'm 43 now. I would say like when I started to get into my mid to late 30s, it really started to take its toll on me. Things like my anxiety worsened, depression, the bouts of depression would last longer and they would be really severe. And it just wasn't a space that I was happy being in anymore. You know, I knew there was more for me. And I knew I could do it. And my wife was incredibly supportive of me, of course, you know, and so she really encouraged me. And around 3.5 years ago, I decided, I don't remember the exact date. I just remember it was in October because I was like, shit, I'm not going to drink. Sorry, I hope I can cuss a little bit.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to drink.
Anybody knows me, they're like, oh, that's nothing compared to what she strings together.
Right. Well, I'm just getting started. But so yeah, I stopped drinking and I started really focusing on ways that I could improve both my physical and mental state. And I started doing cold plunges. I started getting into like holistic things, you know, more yoga, more breath work, more meditation. And eventually that kind of led me to becoming interested in getting my yoga teacher training. So I did that.
Okay.
And while I was doing my yoga teacher training, I was also getting certified as a primal health coach. So, you know, what I really enjoyed about the teacher training was, of course, the yoga is great. You're doing a ton of yoga in it. You're getting in great shape. You're learning how to teach a class. But what was really great, I thought, was all the more classroom type stuff. You know, you really get into your chakras. You really get into the mindfulness aspect of yoga. And that's really what appealed to me. And from there, you know, I really found my voice as a teacher. I'm a learning and development professional in my other real life. So I do, you know, I teach a lot, and mainly to like new employees for my company. I lead them through classes, and it really kind of helped build that part of me to where I realized like that's what I want to do. You know, I want to help people. I want to teach people. If I did this, you know, if I was deep in it and I got myself out, then I can surely help others do this. So yeah, that's
awesome.
like a quick summary of my story.
Yeah, but that's so you're just like such an inspiration, you know, to like that people. So like a lot of us nurses have kind of started, we didn't really have, like, I wouldn't say I had a severe mental health issue prior to this. Like, sure, anxiety and a little depressed. I mean, the normal stuff. I definitely have ADHD, so you know those things kind of come wrapped up together. So before that, this whole event, this COVID thing, I say I was coped pretty well. I did trauma, like nothing really bothered me. And then after this hit, because it's like it doesn't leave you anymore. It's like it becomes part of you, kind of like how your work ended and you started going to the bar and just staying there, you know, the back of the house people. You know, that's what happens to us now. It's like we leave from driving home. You hear on the radio, maybe if you listen to the radio, what's going on with politics and the masks, and then you get home and then you pull up Facebook and like half your family is at a wedding with no masks, and you're like, oh my God, I just can't get away from it. And then you go to sleep at night, and then the nightmares start, and you develop like this real, true mental health issue. And when that started happening, I was like, this is crazy. That there needs to be something to help. And I think that's so good that, so for us, you are like, okay, if he was there and he got through it, you know, let me try and follow in those kind of footsteps. So tell me what primal coaching is. Like, what's the difference? What does that mean? How does that exist?
Yeah. So the way I look at it, and this primal coaching, I don't know if you or anybody watching or listening to this has ever heard of Mark Sisson, but he was a like a endurance athlete, and he just saw that as he was getting older, like the nutrition aspect of it wasn't really working for him. It was one of those, like, he was an endurance guy, so he was preached like the carbo loading stuff, before a race. And he noticed he just didn't feel great after eating any of it. So he kind of started to develop a program, which eventually became this whole line of foods that he has, Primal Kitchen. He has
Oh,
cookbooks.
okay.
Yeah. And then he developed this coaching program so other people could push it. So the way I look at it is, there's no denying that, like, although, I mean, and I do, I have a great respect for modern, like, Western medicine and Eastern medicine, and those are fantastic things, but there's so many contributors now to our life that makes us that make us so unhealthy, as opposed to, like, let's say 200 years ago, right? If you were living 200 years ago, you were eating off the land, probably out of your own backyard. You were eating meat that was well raised without getting pumped full of drugs. You were walking a lot, you were moving. So it's really getting back to that kind of lifestyle. And that, I don't mean like go barefoot everywhere and kill your own meat. Like, you can't do that, but you can take small steps, right? You can read the labels. You can avoid, what I like to do is I try to avoid any ingredients that weren't around. And I just set like a date, like, let's go 1900, because you're going to get rid of a ton of junk if you do that, right? You're going to get rid of that, like, that corn syrup, all the processed foods and all that. So if you can start to just take little things in your life and start to incorporate the way we used to do stuff more, then you're going to start to see benefits. And I mean, I see the benefits. The cold plunge benefits are amazing. You feel fantastic. You feel alive. Just eating good food, knowing you're not putting that junk into your system, actually moving throughout the day, getting up. I know especially for nurses, you're on your feet all the time, but it's also paying attention to how you're moving, being really mindful of it, and like, if you're going to, let's say today, when I went to check the mail, I made it a point to feel how that key felt in my hand going into, like, my mailbox slot and opening it up, because doing little things like that throughout the day is going to make you more present in the moment when you need to, right? So it's just getting back to, to not wearing sunglasses all the time, letting that sunlight hit you, doing a little sun gazing in the morning and looking at the stars at night. It's a whole all-encompassing kind of system that just creates, for me at least, and I know for many others, just good general wellness.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. I mean, I am all about kind of the native traditions. That's something that I've just been kind of diving into as kind of my gifts sort of developed. And I am now comfortable, like, integrating the fact that I do Reiki with my patient, and during COVID, when that happened, I would ask permission of the families on the phone and just say, I'm, a Reiki master. I'm able to do this energy therapy. I can send you, here's an article that you could look at to see that it's like evidence-based or backed by science. Would you want me to do that? And they're like, well, is that, here in the South, in North Carolina, is that like prayer? I'm like, yes, ma'am, I'm going to pray. And they're like, oh, yes, I believe in that. So, sometimes I wouldn't do a full Reiki session, but maybe just an intentional thought or a prayer for them on behalf of their family, and I think a lot of nurses do that. But it's the idea that stepping back, that not just pressors and these terrible medications and all that stuff that we're giving, but we're going back to that ancient thing, because back in Native tradition, when you would speak, the reason a lot of Native American people are very quiet is because when you speak, your words have power, and they're like a spell. That's why it's called spelling, and it's because you're putting that intention out there. So even a collective thought, and I think thinking back, like, what would it be like if it were 1900 and we didn't have all this to distract us? And I think the food is excellent, the food portion of it. You're not just teaching movement or fitness or mindfulness, but you're including the idea of eating like that too, because we know food is medicine.
Right. It's a huge part. But, I think The way I look at my program, at least, is I look at it as layers. And this is something I started noticing kind of recently, actually, is I have a friend who's he's a really talented artist and he's a photographer, and we kind of talked about him when we were opening this, but he was breaking down for me how he creates his work, and it's all in layers. He starts off with this basic raw photo, right? And then he just adds on and adds on. So if you look at yourself as a layer, like, or like take a Russian nesting doll, you know, that you're, what is that smallest nesting doll? Like, what's your core? Who are you at the very bottom of everything? And what do you want that giant nesting doll to be like, right? So what layers can you add to get there, right? You can add nutrition, you can add fitness, you can add mindfulness. It's just knowing the right way to go about them to build yourself into that person you want to be. And it's all layers, you know, and it's okay to stack all types of stuff on there because it's just going to add to who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's something that's so important because I feel like we lose track of that. And then,
Mhm.
of course, with these nurses, especially being very busy. And then, I wanted to touch on the whole masculinity thing
Mhm.
of what you're doing. I really, when I first saw the Primal Hippie, I envisioned this whole program for male nurses or the
Mhm.
veterans that we're going to help. And there's a whole portion of them that sort of get left out in some of
Mhm.
the frou-frou stuff,
Yeah.
mindfulness and meditation, and like how can we incorporate those things in a day? That's great, but if I feel like that's not really a manly thing to do, then I'm missing half of my potential people that I want to help.
Right. And I mean, and I can relate to that because I was there. You know, I was, you know, my wife went to yoga class. I've had, you know, female roommates that went to yoga class, and I always shied away from it just because I was like, oh, you know, that's, it's not for me. I just don't want to, I don't want to stretch. And it's really because I was scared to do it. But, you know, I used to go to, kind of dissolved over COVID, like a lot of gym kind of stuff, but I used to go to men's groups, and it was, you know, held at the yoga studio, and it was just for men, and we would sit there and we'd discuss, you know, there'd usually be one or two topics. We'd do a little movement and we would discuss things. And what I really got out of it, and there were some there were a few nurses in there actually, and some of them were former military medics that were now nurses, and you just saw the stress that was in their lives. And you know, it's really about establishing the okay, I think. You know, that it's okay to feel
Mhm.
stressed. It doesn't make you any less of a man to be overwhelmed. You know, it doesn't make you any less of a man to need a hug sometimes, you know, to look somebody in the eye and really feel that human connection. And and I feel like especially in the States, you know, having the benefit of having grown up in a different country, I mean, when if I were to meet my uncle today after not seeing him in a few years, we would kiss on the cheek, you know, and that's just what we do, you know, and there's nothing not masculine about it. It's just what you do.
Yeah.
And I think we really start to need to break down those walls of like perception for people because there's so much to offer. There's so much you can learn. And really, I think, you know, one of the most masculine things you can do is to be a provider, right? To help take care of others. And there's no way you're going to be able to do that unless you take care of yourself first. You're going to be doing a disservice to those who you're trying to help and to yourself. You know, you're just going to be burning that candle both ends. So I really think that in order for more men to kind of get into things like mindfulness, to get into things like yoga,
Mhm.
even nutrition, you know, like it's great to eat steak all the time and do the carnivore diet, and I did it and I loved it. And but it's also good to learn a little bit more about it, to be willing to admit that you don't know everything, I think is huge for
Mhm.
guys, and
Yeah.
to just be curious. You know, there's so many experiences out there waiting for us, and to just close them off because of a, you know, some perception you have, I think is a huge disservice.
Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. I am so glad that you said that. That's such a wonderful, wonderful perspective. And I think we get right now, we're wrapped up in this COVID thing. I mean, we are wrapped up. And it's like we can't see past it. And for a lot of us, it's going to be the new normal.
Mhm.
And especially in healthcare, it's going to be the new normal. And I think like accepting is going to be the first step in allowing ourselves that space to like, okay, today's going to suck and it's just going to suck. But I came into this profession for a reason, because I want to be a provider. I want to help people. I want to make a difference, and I'm going to stick it out because we have to change it. We have to get to a place where it's better. And I think integrating a lot of the things that we have forgotten as a people and as a human race, you know, and that stuff is starting to come back. Like I saw that. Did you see that movie yet? Soul, that Disney movie?
Oh, it's amazing. God, I love that movie.
I was like, I'm the guy with the sign.
Right.
was like, I'm the shaman. I was like, that's me on the corner. It was amazing. And my kids were like, oh, mommy does all this stuff, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and not just that, Pixar, somebody over there is really into mindfulness, because Inside Out was wonderful too, you know, about emotions. And I feel like they're making those movies for adults more than they are for kids nowadays, which is because it makes it easy for people to talk about it. And that's what we need to do. Things like this, you know, I've never felt like more of a man than I have when I'm helping somebody, another guy, and there's like tears in both our eyes, you know, and it's okay to be there. It's like, God, it's just like, it's funny how there's just such a stigma against it. And really, it's just our own thoughts and perceptions. So if we can change those and we can change ourselves, then we can help change other people.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, you know, and the thing is, you know, you talk about like neuroplasticity, like we were talking about, and it's like once you create that space in your thoughts for things like that, then it exists.
Right.
That's the part of like, you know, quantum mechanics and believing that once you speak it or once you believe it into existence, then it can be. And, you know, I think that perception of things is coming because in Native tradition, they teach that, you know, when it's time to mature and become a man, they go out and do their vision quest, and they've been prepared to survive in the wild by themselves. But they come inside themselves. You know how scary that must have been? Like you grew up in a tribe in a time where like there was no like you couldn't walk up the street and ask for help, and then you're out there and you knew them fuckers weren't coming to save you if you fucked up, because that was your vision and your journey. So you had to be ready to go at 14.
Yeah, and that's something we've completely lost right now. I mean, what's a 14-year-old do? They're stuck on like video games all day. I mean, I have nieces, nephews, and I have a daughter that's 11, and you just see them, and it's like that is the new normal. And we really have to reestablish, I think, that connection with nature, that connection with like, you know, the divinity of everything. Of the universe, of the trees. We're all made from the same stuff. When you really look at it, we're all star stuff, right? So there's so much connection out there. And the neuroplasticity, the ways we can improve that, the little steps we can take through everything from, you know, going through microdosing to eating, you know, good adaptogenic mushrooms, things like that. It's like there's steps we can take. We just need kind of people to Sherpa us along the way, you know? And that's what I want to be. I got to
you're like the bumper, you know. Juan always says that it's like we're both like he always tells me about like the kids because I have 3 little boys, and he's always like, you cannot dictate who they are, right? Especially my oldest has a little bit of Asperger's. He's on the spectrum. He's very high functioning. His IQ of like 120, and he's just very special. Yeah, and it's like the world is much louder for him. It's much different for him, and he's always telling me it's like the bowling alley and you're just the bumper. You just guide him, but you're not going to create him or change who he is. No. And I think that's your goal. That's your purpose, is to like be that bumper. That's funny because at work, you know, my other job, we got to choose like what our little lanyards say, what our name tags say. And oh, that's bougie. Yeah. So I decided, you know, what I really am passionate about that I get to do there is to kind of help people figure out where they want to go with the company, right? Give coaching talks, things like that. So mine says Purpose Sherpa because that's what I want to do. I don't want to take the hike. You should get shirts. Yeah. But I don't want to take that hike for you. I just want to be there along the way to help you, you know, because you're never going to get it if somebody's taking the steps for you. You know, if somebody's lifting the weights, you're not going to get strong. But if somebody's there to spot you, then together you can make that magic happen. Right. Yeah.
we can all help each other out. Everybody needs a helping hand, even if they're not willing to admit it. So.
Yep, definitely. Also, we're getting shirts. I wrote it
I
down.
like it.
It's happening because I just put an order. I'm going to put an order in for the Save a Nurse shirts that say the Cortex method, and it has like the EKG. So I just put an order. Now I'm going to be like, I need purple or purpose Sherpa shirts. And for some reason, I envision them being purple.
Hey,
Purple purpose Sherpa shirts.
I love it.
It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. So I want to ask you this question. If you had 10 seconds with every person on the planet or every person in your demographic that you'd want to be a purpose Sherpa to,
okay,
10 seconds, what would you say to them?
All right. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me just think real quick. I would say you are enough. You can do great things, and you are loved.
Oh, I love it. That was perfect. You took mine. I'm kidding. No, but I really think that's important. You know, you're enough. And I think that's such the if I could drive home one point in this program. So the Primal Hippie and I are maybe, possibly, hopefully, if I can twist his arm, working into making a program just for male nurses. We're really excited to bring that because I feel like that is something that they need to hear. Any nurse needs to hear, but you are enough.
Yeah.
Everything that we're doing, because it feels so hopeless. Sometimes I'm hearing, you know, stories of where we're losing like 29 patients in a 30-bed unit in one shift or 2 days, you know, and it's like, that is not what you're used to as a critical care nurse.
Right.
You're used to saving everybody, oftentimes when they shouldn't be saved, you know, and we still keep people alive. And now it's different. You know, when I was in Boston, we ran out of drugs. We were running out of sedation drugs. And it was just like, okay, well, we can't do that. We can't make them comfortable. And that was the biggest fear we all had, was running out of sedation drugs at the end of life for those patients that were going to pass away. And so we just really rationed it. And unfortunately, you know, we just weren't prepared for something of this magnitude. So the "you are enough" statement really hits home. Like, are we enough? Did I do my best today? Because I feel like I did, but it doesn't feel like it's enough.
Yeah, I think where people get lost on that is they think that just because you're not seeing maybe like an actual moving piece that is completed, or you didn't complete the task. Well, to me, the intention behind it is so important, right? If your intentions were, if you did everything you could to save that person, then you did your best, you know, and you are enough. Like that's where we need to kind of separate things. Is this society is so, you know, monetarily driven, when we're all about just like, who's got the coolest car, what kind of watch do you have, whatever. But none of that shit matters, man. Like what really matters is how you treat people, how you treat yourself, and just how you treat the planet around you. And if you do all those things with grace, and what I mean by that is really, I mean, mainly is treat yourself with some grace, right? You always try to treat other people the way you want to be treated, but you never treat yourself the way you should be treated, right? It's
like shirt. Okay, I'm gonna get a book. Write it down.
It's true though. Like look at the way, I mean, at least for me, like I have a black belt in talking badly about myself. And I can find
that's been my lesson this year.
Yeah, I could find 1,000 things wrong with me, you know, and in any minute of any day. But it's time to stop thinking like that, you know, and it's time to really start to appreciate our uniqueness, our commonalities, everything that makes us us, and us as a collective whole. And I can't think of, you know, a better profession to help than nurses for that, just because of the impact everybody can have, you know. And just think, even if one of your colleagues sees the care you put in, sees the impact you have on a patient, whether or not you save them, they see the intention there, that's going to have a domino effect, right? So the more people that can get kind of aligned with their purpose, with the right way of thinking, the right way of doing things, I think slowly the world is going to start to change. And you know, it's kind of a hopeless world in some ways, just because you look at the way things are going, but I still have hope for humanity. And, you know, whether it's this go around or the next, I think we're all going to make it. And
Or we
Yeah.
have to come back. I better make it because I am done. I'm over this shit. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
don't. Yeah, I don't know if I want to come back. I just want to go into the ether and see all the stuff that I've always dreamed about.
Right? Well, we can do that through meditation, right?
That's true. Been there.
Yep. Yeah, I know. It's quite the ride. It's
Yeah.
funny because in the movie Soul,
Hmm.
I saw when I traveled to astral plane, I saw it as a ship.
Oh, really?
And I never knew because I started describing it to people
Hmm.
and they were like, oh yeah, like Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, do I look like a Dungeons and Dragons girl? No. But I was like, I don't think so. And I was like, I don't know what you mean. And then they had to like physically Google things for me to show me that that's, and I was like, oh, because that's a collective thought. And
Right.
then they were like, what? And I'm like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, I do a lot of Joe Dispenza guided meditations.
Oh, I
Really,
love
like,
Joe Dispenza.
yeah.
Who doesn't?
If you've never done Dr. Joe, just get ready for some weird voice intonations, but it's all done with a purpose.
Yeah.
But I really like, I kind of follow his guides of being like in space. You feel the space between your ears and the space between your ears in the room, and it really creates this feeling. And when I've reached that level in meditation, it's been like, I don't even know what I'm on. I just feel like the clouds part and I see stars and I'm in space and I'm part of everything. And it's just like, it's an amazing experience. And man, like to be able to help people get there, that's just like,
it's so freeing. I remember the first time I really, I had finished a COVID assignment. I was in the middle of this last COVID assignment and, it was actually Juan and I we used to go to the beach for all the full moons, like, real hippies.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were down for a full moon. And I just remember like looking up at the stars and feeling like the universe literally hugged me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they were like, hey, and I'm like, shit, where have I been? They're like, I don't know, where have you been? And we're just kind of like, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm back now.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, and I decided to just like open up to, source, God, the, divine being, whatever you believe it to be, but open up and be like, okay, I have a purpose. What is it? Show me it.
Right.
And that's when things started just really falling into place. And that's when I get the best downloads or the best ideas, or, I feel like I'm in the most, I guess, a flow state.
Yeah, the flow state, right? Just like the movie. It's true, though. I mean,
it's amazing.
It's really, for me, it was I've had a couple experiences, and one of them was when this all started, COVID stuff. We did one of those like driveway hangouts that people are doing, like with our family, where we all put our camping chairs in our driveway and sat around and hung out. And I was the only one not drinking, because the rest of my family drinks, and that's fine, and more power to them. But I was doing my own thing, and I just remember sitting there, and it was summer, maybe not summer yet, but May, and like in Northern California, it gets very hot. And I remember sitting in my driveway in my like reclining lawn chair, and I was really trying to be like mindful in the moment. And I remember feeling like, it's kind of hard to describe like all these things, but a direct beam of energy, and I can only describe it like as a beam of love, was just bursting into my chest, like just filling me up from the sun. And it was just like, God, it was just such an experience of gratitude, of power, and just, you feel that power that our own universe has, and we're floating all in it, and it's all part of us. It's all around us. So.
And I love that. And one of the things that I talk about in this third module for these nurses is that collectiveness. And I don't kind of put it as woo-woo as that, but basically during rounds, we have the opportunity to, before we start talking about patients, usually everybody in the care team gets together and they go room to room in the ICU. And we really have the opportunity to just take a minute to pause and be mindful and be like, okay, it doesn't matter what's going on. You're present here in this rounding, and but if we had a collective thought towards not only the patient outcome being positive, but our own personal positive day, like what would the energy on that unit look like? Like what would the energy to the patients be? Like we would be able to really refuel each other. And that is what we aim to teach. That's why Cortex Energy Systems is called an energy system, an energy alignment system, because everybody has the energy. We're not fighting it. We're just making the systems and getting the pieces in order so that people can access it.
That's perfect. You know, just to be able to take that 5 minutes and just be mindful for 5 minutes would just it makes a huge difference in my day. You know, I do morning meditation. I don't go super long. Sometimes I'm laying down. I don't sit with my legs crossed all the time with my hands like in your traditional position. Meditation can be a walk around the block. As long as you're being mindful and you're sitting in that space and you're allowing yourself to kind of dissolve into that space and allowing the time it takes and really, really focusing on being present in the moment, then it's just going to set yourself up for like greater things afterwards. Whether you do it at night, you'll get a better night's sleep, or in the morning to set yourself up for a positive day, or before a shift, or mid shift. I'm sure, how many of the people watching or listening to this need that break to kind of just sit there and breathe for a second, away from the stress, away from the pain, the sadness, the anger that this is all causing within us, and
I think we don't realize we can even turn it off. I didn't know that. I didn't know I could even say no thank you to that thought. I had no idea that I was able to do that. And I read this book, I think it was Deepak Chopra, maybe, about you're not your thoughts, how you are not your thoughts. They're thoughts that you can say, stop, I don't agree with that, or I don't want to think that. And then you can sit there quietly and enjoy that space. And I think the breath is the anchor to that.
Right. It is.
So you can not be like, I can't stop thinking. And then you think to yourself, okay, just slow and controlled breath. And you feel that breath in your heart space, and there it is. You're like, oh. And that is we have to always breathe.
Yeah. And so that's like the secret to it, right? You start paying attention to your breath. You're not going to pay attention to that other stuff. You're going to focus on that. And once you start to focus on that, and it takes practice just like anything, but once you can get to that point where you can start to focus on your breath, then after a while, you're not going to have to think about it as much. And you're kind of just going to be able to dissolve into that space and let yourself sit with it.
Yep. I'm so excited. We have some breath work in there that's super neat for nurses. And I'm excited to learn more. And that's what I tell everybody. I'm like, I am just an ICU nurse. If the Primal Hippie died right now and I was there, I'd probably bring him back. But do not ask me anything about the majority of other things that exist on this earth. So I was like, I need the people to teach me those things, to learn from, to integrate. I want the nurse to be able to reach out to our program and find something for him or her.
Yeah, and I just hope I can be an asset to people. So I'm here to purpose Sherpa, to be people's Sherpa along the way.
We're getting shirts. I want hats, like that would be cool.
Oh, trucker hats.
You can get your friend's artwork and then put Purpose Sherpa on it.
That would be rad.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right, I'm ready. I'm ready when you are.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I really appreciate talking to you, as I always do. And we will get together soon and get to work.
Awesome. I'm so excited.
Check out the Primal Hippie on Instagram, and he has a Facebook. And if you follow me on Instagram, then you'll be able to find him pretty easily. So I wish everyone the best. And thank you so much to the Primal Hippie.
Yeah, thank you all so much. If you ever want to chat, have any questions, _primal_hippie on Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me. I can't wait to start working and creating programs with Cortex. It's going to be amazing. We're going to do great things for you. So stay tuned. I'm super stoked. Thank you for having me.
Light and love to you.
To you as well.
Please hang up and try again.